probably been very busy. I just wondered if you're recording it, then I could get a link and listen to it, because I was at last time, so I wanted to follow on, but some friends of
it is
mine...
recording.
Is it?
It is recording. I can see it. It says recording.
Right. Okay, brilliant. Yes, I can see it now. So how do I see the recording of it? Because I need to leave you at about 10 past.
Well, we'll do that bit afterwards. It's recording.
I said, so how will I know? How will I get the link?
You'll get it from the rabbi. The rabbi will get it at the end of the session. He'll get it sent to him by email. I'm sure he'll forward it on to you.
Oh, well, that's brilliant. I can watch the first 10 minutes and then I'll have to leave you. But thank you. Thanks very much.
Hello, Carol.
Hi, you're right.
Hello.
No, did someone say no?
Did you say
No,
no?
I say hello.
Oh, hello. Sorry.
I thought she said no as well.
It's my Spanish accent, Carol.
Yeah. Any
We
excuse.
say no instead of hello.
Okay.
Somebody in lockdown learning, but I don't know who they are. Would they like to reveal themselves?
Oh, lockdown learn.
Obviously not.
Obviously not, no. Okay.
I'm a bit like, I get that as at Purim. I can't bear people in masks and I don't know who they are. It actually completely and utterly freaks me out, actually. I find it very disconcerting.
It would be nice to know. No. Hello, Paula, as well. It's nice to see you.
Hello, nice to see you too.
So, slowly. I'm sure the rabbi's on his way.
Well, he let us in, so I presume he's...
That's a very big piece of paper you've got there, Graham.
Oh, really?
Oh, just from this angle, it looks like they're very impressive.
Only A4. That's what I printed out from the notes for tonight.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Everyone, okay, sorry, I think I'm a minute late. I apologise. It's been a whirlwind today, but we've made it. We're here. How is everyone doing? I'm just going to cancel all these things on my screen so I can not be disturbed. Everyone okay?
Thank you.
Good.
Yes, thank you.
Nice wedding?
Yes, a whirlwind. Been done, gone. They're married with hours to go till the deadline. But yes, it was very, very, very nice. Beautiful. Weird. It's weird because you've got about 10, 15 people in the room and tons of people watching on Zoom. So you kind of got to like it's just weird. It's just odd, you know. But they're married, so another one successfully done. I'm going to jump straight in actually today because in about half an hour we have a meeting with the US rabbis, chairs, and a briefing, kvetch, I don't know what it is, information about lockdowns, tier 2. So I want to jump straight in. So thank you for joining. Thank you for saying hello, everyone. And what I want to do is, I'm just going to share my screen in a second. What I want to do this evening is go back to the story we were looking at last week, but deal with something totally different. And that is Yael. Now, before I do that, I have somewhat of an apology because right at the end of last week, I was asked about Devorah. Now, just for those people that didn't join us last week, let me just bring everyone to speed in 30 seconds. Last week, we dealt with the story of the Shofetes, the prophetess Devorah. Devorah, a woman of strength, a woman of great integrity, a woman of power. She was the boss in that story last week. She controlled everything, she guided everything, and she really stands in the history books as a real powerful woman, standing up for a lot of, you know, we sort of looked at some of the, because everyone make sure you're muted, by the way, just it's really helpful just in case, and then if you want to unmute yourself at any point to speak, that's fine. But she really stood up for breaking maybe some of the misconceptions or stereotypes that we have about women or have about leadership, and I think it was a very powerful piece. That all happens in chapters 4 and 5 of the book of Judges, about 160 years or so after the Jewish people get into Israel. So we have the 5 books of the Torah, all the way through the desert. Moses, blah, blah, blah. Moses dies. Joshua brings them into Israel. That's 14 years of conquering the land and settling the land. And then we move into the period of the Judges, the Shoftim. Devorah is about, let's say, 160 years into that cycle, into that period. And we are introduced to the Canaanites, the Canaanim. They rule over Israel for 20 years. King Yavin, he's the man in charge. And he has his top officer, his top general, is a man called Sisera. So Sisera has 900 chariots. He's got tons of troops. They've got a big stronghold of the land. They've been ruthless in their dictatorship over the land of Israel. And eventually the Jewish people, they cry out to God. They repent from their evil ways, their bad ways. So God sends Devorah, the prophetess. She comes in. She calls on Barak. And they forge together an army. They have 10,000 troops. And they go to the top of Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor, which is in the north part of Israel, sort of in the area towards the Kinneret. I did have a map when I was preparing this on my work computer, and now at home my laptop, and I don't have the map on this computer. I apologize. But if you can just imagine, it's sort of near the Kinneret on the east side, on the Israel, I suppose, side. So that's the story that we kind of dealt with last week. We talked about Devorah, her leadership, calling Barak, her power, her influence, and we kind of stopped there. And I want to pick up there and deal with Yael. Yael, I think, from some aspects, there's even more to talk about. Who is this woman? I mean, we were introduced to Yael. Before we do that, let me just go and share my screen. There's one verse we need to deal with before we get straight into the story of Yael. But I was asked last week, this is why I want to make an apology. I was asked last week, whatever happened to Devorah? Because we're really moving away from Devorah for the most part. What happened to Devorah? Someone asked me, you know, who her kids, where she buried, all these things. So I've done a bit of research, and I don't know. I can't find where it says that she died. It's not, often it will say this one died, that one died. I couldn't find it. It might be there, but I couldn't find if she died. I'm sure she did. Who her kids were. Like, there's just no mention of it. She just like disappears. That's also very odd. So I apologize. I would endeavor to keep looking. If not, there's a few like experts in Tanakh in Israel that maybe I'll send a message to see if I can get a more definitive answer. But so I apologize that I haven't got a definitive answer on Devorah. But great question, whoever asked. And let me share my screen now. Right, so this is essentially the source sheet that I sent out, a couple of editions. If you are looking at it, I didn't add it. This is the one that got sent out. It's this first verse at the top of the page. This first verse is one verse taken from the middle of the Devorah story. And we skipped over it last week because it's seemingly irrelevant, but actually it's an important verse. And the verse goes as follows. In the context of the story, 10,000 troops are with Barak on the top of Mount Tabor. The Mount Tabor, Barak, they're waiting to send their army down to start a battle with the Canaanites, with Sisera. And literally, before we hear about the war, we have this one verse. V'chever HaKeni, this man called Chever, who is a Kenite. This is not the Canaanim. Excuse me, this is not the Canaanim. This is a Kenite, not a Canaani. Nifrad Mikayan. He separated himself from the other Kenites. So Kenite is a tribe, a group of, a culture, a tribe, a people. This man called Chever, who was a Kenite, separated himself from the other Kenites. And he was part of his family. He was part of the family of Chovav. Who was Chovav? Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe. Who was Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe? This was Yitro, right? Yitro, who lived in the times of Egypt, who was the high priest of Egypt, whose daughter marries Moshe, who we read in the Torah joins Bnei Yisrael, but there's many opinions as to what ends up happening to him. One of his descendants is this man called Chever and his family. Okay, so then basically he says he moves from one place to another. That's the verse. Chever, a Kenite, moves from the Kenite camp, city, to another place. We don't have to worry about it. Kadesh is basically northeast of the Kinneret, if you really want to pinpoint, about northeast of where the Kinneret is, or the Sea of Galilee is. one strange verse that seemingly is insignificant. We skipped over it last week. I think even the art school puts it brackets because it's like, what is this doing here? It's not relevant to our story, or is it? So let's see. We're going to jump now into the story where I want to pick it up. We're going to pick up where we left off last time. Listen to this story. I'm going to read these few verses, and I'd love you to think of questions. What doesn't seem right? What's out of place, if anything? Hold on to the questions between this small paragraph, and then I want you to ask me them because there's some interesting things here. The sister and us, right? We've got to imagine Barak has been told go by Devorah. They've sent their thousands of troops down the mountain. They're coming down the mountain. Yeah, right. They're coming. Big war. Sisera, we did say last week, flees away from his army. He doesn't stay to fight. He sees this army coming with Barak at the lead, at the head, and Sisera flees on foot. He jumps off his chariot and he runs away. Where does he run to? Ohel Yael. He runs to the tent of Yael. We have not met Yael until now. Who is she? Eshet Chaver. She is the wife of Chava Hakeni. What do we know about Chava Hakeni? Sorry. All we know is now he moved from one place to the other. He separated himself from the other Kenites, and he's got a wife called Yael. And Sisera runs to Yael's tent. Ki shalom bein Yavin melech Hatzor or bein bet Chava Hakeni, because there was peace between King Yavin, i.e. the Canaanite king who was ruling over Israel, and this man Cheva and the Canaan. So there was obviously, Sisera felt safe and comfortable going to Yael. But Teitza Yael, in Yudchet and 18, she comes out, Likron Sisera, to greet Sisera. V'tomer elav, Surah Adonai, Surah Elai al Tira. Come with me, come into my tent. He goes into her tent. Do not fear, I will look after you. How she knew he was coming, I don't know. There must have been a great war happening. She must have been looking outside. She sees Sisera coming. She goes out to meet him, come into my tent. And in the bold words, V'tachsehu b'smicha. And she covered him with a blanket. Bit odd. V'yomer aleha. And he says to her, Hakshina ma'at mayim kitz meisi. I'm thirsty, I'm parched. Please, could I have a little water? That's what Sisera says to Yael. And what does she do? She opens up a satchel of milk, a skin full of milk, and she covers him once again. He asks for water, she gives him milk and recovers him. Right? So he says to her now, go stand at the entrance of your tent. And if someone comes, if a man comes looking for me, tell him I'm not here. It's a bit comical. So what does she do? If anyone's not muted, please do mute, all right? So what does she do? She takes in her hand a pin, a tent peg. In her other hand, she takes a mallet. She takes the peg and smashes it into his head where he lies, and he dies. He falls to the floor and he dies. Now Barak, who chased himself after Sisera, right? Because Sisera flees, Barak needs to kill Sisera. What did we say about Barak last week? Really important, by the way. Remember what happened last week. Devorah says to Barak, Barak, your job is to go and lead the troops into war. What does Barak say back to Devorah? I'm only going if you come with. He got a little bit scared. He got a bit apprehensive. And he felt that for whatever reason, Devorah, the prophetess, needed to be with him. And what does she say back to him? Okay, I'll come with. But if I come with, if you can't do this on your own, Barak, then the victory of the battle will be won at the hands of a woman, right? And what do we see? Her prophecy coming to fruition, because Yael has killed Sisera. So Barak, who's still searching for Sisera, approaches the tent of Yael. Obviously, he's got wind that that's where Sisera headed to. Barak right there for Sisera. But Teitza Yael likrato, I'm right at the bottom here, where my mouse is moving. Sorry. Behine Barak rodef Sisera. So Barak chased after Sisera. V'teitzi Yael likrato. Yael now goes out to meet Barak. V'tomer Eloi, and she says to him, Lech ve'erech. The person you're looking for actually is inside this tent. He came into my tent. You should come now into my tent. V'hinei Sisera noifel mate. v'hiated b'karato. And behold, lo and behold, Sisera is lying on the floor with a peg in his head, dead on the floor. This is basically the end of the story. This is, I find it, it's not the greatest of tragic stories in the world, but it's an interesting story. What other story does this sound similar to? Anyone? Feel free to unmute and participate now. Come on, a very famous story. We are fast approaching the festival that commemorates this very monumental part of an important story. I'll give you a clue.
Solomon.
Oh, not Solomon.
Yehudit.
Oh, Judith. Thank you, Rabbeinu Graham. Judith, Yehudis, in the story of the Hanukkah story of the Maccabees, she goes in. Anyone know the name of the general she killed? I always get it wrong. Huh?
Holofernes.
Holofernes, exactly. Holofernes. And who was he? Trick question.
Greek general.
Babylonian.
Oh, I love it. Who said Babylonian?
Me, Arthur.
Hi, Arthur. So you're both right and you're both wrong. There's different opinions. Was he Babylonian? Was he Greek? We're not going to go down that road. Not our share today. Just interesting, right? This does sound a little bit familiar with that story. We're not going to deal with the similarities now. It's just worth pointing out. But anyone got anything interesting to ask about that story? No, any observations? If not, go, Carol. Are you waving at me or are you waving at Nigel?
Nigel's actually had to go to a client, so no.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know how anybody would have the strength to kill somebody unless you're very angry with that. It's quite a thing to do, isn't it? To actually, apart from the actual emotional thing of actually killing somebody, most people who kill in absolute anger and rage and therefore have the strength to do it. We've got nothing about that there. And also physically to actually stick a mallet through somebody's head or stick a tent pin with a mallet, it's quite an act. It's quite a remarkable thing to be able to do, isn't it?
I love your observation because it is going to tie into something that I want to end with. So hold on to that. And if I don't come back to the way you've said that, please, but it's such a good perceptive idea that I want to come back to it, because the basic point I think you're trying to say is like where that come from and who has that koach in them to do something. We'd be worried if this it's just habitual for her, right? But we know anything about her, and also what I suppose highlights your question further is, what do we say? That there was peace between the Kenites and the Canaanites, right? This was somewhere he fled because he felt there would be refuge there, and he willingly went into the tent for her to look after him. So
and he was calm enough to fall asleep, so he was relaxed enough to go to sleep.
We didn't say he fell asleep, but yes, okay, let's see what happens. Good. Okay, anyone else got any comments?
What was her motive?
What was her motive? Okay, we could ask similar to Carol. Good, what was her motive? Anyone else?
Cheva separated himself.
Is that Debbie? Hi, Debbie.
Hi. Cheva, it says he separated his tent from everyone else.
Oh, so good, excellent. So the first verse we read is, so you're asking why, or you're just making an observation?
I presume because he separated himself from the other Canaanites.
Right, so we don't know why he did that, do we, right? It's not clear, it's in an odd place. In fact, we don't really know when he did that. At some point, though, we're supposed to highlight the fact that this man, his family, separates himself, and it's brought into the story at a point in which it must be significant that he separated himself. Does that make sense? But we're not given the reason why. Excellent. Salvador, Barbara, Salvador, you had your hands up. I'm coming to everyone. I can see your hands up.
Yes, I was going to say that he separated because some way or another, Yael and the husband are related to the Jewish nation. They, through Yitro, that's why the first verse is there. To Yitro, they are related to Israel, and the separation is just to tell us where to find Yael, and that Yael is fighting for the Jewish people.
Oh, so excellent point. You bring up Yitro. Was Yitro Jewish?
No.
Anthony Kaiser says no. David Levison said no.
Well,
Arthur and Susie, we don't know.
I thought he converted.
He converted. Apparently.
Oh, so we never know what happens to Yitro, right? And this is crucial because I can bring you 10 opinions that say one thing and 10 opinions that say another. A couple of years ago, I gave a share on a Wednesday night. I think, Graham, I think you might have been there, and Carol, a few of you were there. And we actually tried to work out that Yitro and Chovav and all these people were actually different people. And we went through the verses to work out that actually Yitro wasn't Moshe's father-in-law, and Chovev was Moshe's father-in-law. Actually, Yitro was Moshe's brother-in-law, and whatever. But there is, bless you, Graham. There are so many. Good health, but there were so many opinions as to exactly what happened to Yitro. So the two main ones: either he became Jewish and stayed with Moshe, or he became Jewish but settled somewhere and decided not to, or he just wasn't Jewish, they stayed with Moshe for a bit, and then he left, and then he just went off and settled. So maybe Yael's Jewish, but we don't know. Maybe she's Jewish. Now, if she's Jewish, then you could already see a motive as to why she, cut the line there with the tent peg, because, she's batting for our side, right? But if she's not, why does she act? Good questions. David Levinson?
So taking on Debbie's train of thought, I think we can say from that verse 11 that's in brackets in the Art Scroll translation that there has been bad blood previously between the Canaanites and the Kenites.
You might have made that up, though.
Yes, I accept that, but Hever has sort of moved away from his own side and has come across. But that doesn't necessarily...
1 second, I'm going to challenge you. Who said anything about Hever? This is all Yael.
Well, no. It says Hever separated. I said I'm going back to Debbie's original point.
Oh, sorry.
Hever separated.
Good point.
Now, but that doesn't necessarily mean the bad blood has gone away. I want to bring this back to Devorah, actually,
right.
Because from what you explained last week and from what we know about Devorah, she clearly was a power player in the sense that she would have known about all of the politics that's going on in the region. She'll know, about the Kenites and Hever splitting from the Kenites. So, and stop me if I'm jumping too far ahead, but when Devorah actually says to Barak that Sisera will be delivered by the hands of a woman, maybe she really does know enough about the politics to know that this Hever Yavin alliance is a very temporary one and one of convenience.
You could be right. I mean, it's a nice guess. My only issue with that is if it was known, then why is Sisera fleeing to Yael? That's what you have to ask yourself. It would appear that Yael herself is putting herself in danger, because we know, because we've got hindsight, because we're reading this as a story, that she's going to kill him, right? We don't know why, but she's putting herself on the line, and that's what we're going to come back to. Anyone else got something
She's acting undercover then.
Okay, could be. Could be.
Sholem with Sisera, or Yavin and Sisera.
Okay.
She's acting undercover.
Okay, all good points, which hopefully we're going to piece this together. I'm only moving on for David Lerner because we've got. I've just seen the time. Go for it, David.
Can you hear me talking? Yes, right.
Yes, don't worry.
Seeing how David just referred to undercover, I can't help but notice that there are 3 incidents that I can think of in Tanakh where the issue of somebody being covered is very important. Last week in Noah, where he's covered after the flood, and an invasion to avoid a lot less of dignity and immorality. And then there is the story of Ruth going into the tent and lying down and covering herself up. So it's when something is mentioned so specifically, that's such an odd feature, we have to think that there is some kind of connection.
Are you talking about immodesty or immorality, or what are you talking about? What's the connection?
I don't know yet, But what I do know is that there's got to be some connection, number one. Number two, Yael is behaving in a completely out of keeping manner with which women in the Middle East at that period in time would behave. Women stayed in the tent, men went out. Women did not invite men into the tent. That was a no-no.
So why did he go?
Well, he didn't care. Men will go in, invited or otherwise. But for A, it's weird that she invited him in, and B, it's extraordinary that he asked somebody, a woman, to keep guard. Not exactly something you would normally.
Yeah, it's very, very weird. Good point. So let's see what happened, right?
I don't think it's relevant to anything. I just thought
no. I actually think it's all relevant, which is why I asked people for their insights. Firstly, Arthur, is it quick and go on?
I was just going to say that I don't agree that women in those days were purely tent dwellers, because how did Moshe meet Zipporah? How did Yaakov meet Rachel? So women did go out, and they had different roles, but I think they did go out, and they weren't just tent dwellers.
Yeah, they went out when they had jobs to do, but they didn't have people in. I was there. I know.
I'm only stopping you. It's all good. I love it. I'm just a bit pushed for time tonight. So I'm going to jump over that. What all this was that I brought up here on the top of the screen, as you can see now, is I brought in what happens in chapter 4 is the story. What happens in chapter 5, we saw last week, it's Devorah and her Shirat Devorah. It's the song that she sings, which she puts everything that happens into context of the Torah was given and everything was good, and then the Jewish people kind of went to do bad things, and then they were led onto being ruled ruthlessly under the Canaanim, and then Devorah came and she kind of speaks herself as Devorah, the savior, and then most interestingly enough are these words in bold: most blessed Tavorach minashim Yael ishet chava akeni minashim bo'er tavorech. Most blessed of women is this woman Yael, who was the wife of Cheva, the Kenites. And then it's got this weird language, Minashim bo'ohel tevorach, the most blessed of women in tents. Yael is most blessed of women in tents. Now, I would love to have a discussion with you about what that means, but I'm just going to tell you what the Gemara says in a second. And then it says at the bottom here, at her feet he sank, lay outstretched. At her feet he sank, lay still where he sank. There he lay, destroyed. What happens? Because she brings him the milk and then she kills him. So it's just as her singing the song, and it's really, if we had loads of time, then we'd go through everything to work out exactly the differences in the story, because she seems to be adding a bit of information. The Gemara tells us what she's adding. So what's she doing? Says the Gemara Nazir, which is a fascinating Gemara. Ela ema k'mitzvah shelo lishma dichsev. Right? The Gemara wants to talk about this concept of a mitzvah that is either lishma or lo lishma, a commandment that is for the sake of heaven or not for the sake of heaven. If I do a mitzvah, what's the reason for me doing that mitzvah? Am I doing a mitzvah because God says it's a mitzvah, so therefore I want to do it? I want to be altruistic about it, or I feel like I need to do the mitzvah because I love God? Or am I doing it lo lishma? I'm doing it not for the sake of heaven. I'm doing it because I want to be rewarded for it, or for whatever other reason. And they equate that to this known as a avera lishma, a righteous sin. What are we talking about? The proof is, it is Yael, blessed above women shall Yael be, the wife of Hever the Canaanite. I'm reading this Gemara here. Above all the women in the tent shall she be blessed. And it is taught, who are these women in the tent? They are Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. The women of the tent are imaot, the great mothers that came before. Why? Because she slept with him. She, Yael, slept with Sisera. One opinion says that he actually raped her. The other opinion is that she seduced him in order that he would sleep with her, in order that she could kill him. And this is an avera, a sin, lishma, for the sake of heaven, that she would bring herself and put herself into A, danger, and B, sin, because she's married, in order to save the Jewish people. That's exactly what she does. Says the Gemara, she brings herself into the tent. She brings him into the tent in a way in which David points out wasn't necessarily the most befitting thing to do for a woman or a man, I suppose, in those days, but definitely not for a woman. She lures him into the tent. She gives him milk, not water. He asks, he said, I'm thirsty. So what does she do? She gives him milk, because milk will make him sleepy. A little bit like Yehudis, like Graham said before, makes him sleepy. Then she lies with him. She sleeps with him. She covers him up. She covers him up again. There's a immodesty that David pointed out. You know, that same with Noah. There's something inappropriate happening here. But that's why he needed to be covered up again. So they have relations. And this, the Gemara says, was a good thing. It's praiseworthy, because the relationships, the sexual relationships that are those mothers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah had with their husbands, is on the same level as Yael in terms of the mitzvah. The fact that it was not a mitzvah, but it wasn't an avera. It was a good, praiseworthy thing that she did. So the Gemara says that she did something very, very, very wrong for a very right reason. Now the Midrash goes crazy on this and says, "Are you kidding me? You really think this is true? Look at what this Midrash says. There three fled from the scene, and God joined his name with theirs." I'm just doing the English now because we're going to run out of time. Yosef, Yael, and Palti. I'm not going to go through Palti. I'm not going to go through Yosef. Yosef, we know, fled from Ashes Potiphar, the wife of Potiphar. How do we know that Yael fled? Yael went out to greet Sisera, and she covered him in a semicha. What is a semicha? The Midrash asks. I said it like it's a blanket, right? Because that's what the translation says. But where did the translation get it from? The rabbis here said, some of the rabbis in the Gemara say it's a cloth, it's a sudra, it's a piece of clothing. The rabbis there, i.e. other rabbis, said it's some kind of vessel, a tub. But Reish Lakish said, we have reviewed Tanakh and found no such thing called a semicha. Therefore, what is a semicha? I really need the Hebrew to get this properly. The semicha is shemi ko. My name is here. My name, God's name, testifies that this wicked one did not touch her. So you've got a Gemara that says that she laid with him and that she did so to do a sin, to do something bad for the right reasons to protect Israel. And here you've got a very different perspective. Praiseworthy is Yael because he did not touch with her. She did not do anything wrong. She was there to try and help Klal Yisrael in all the right ways without allowing herself to be attacked by him or seduced by him, whatever it might be. Two very different opinions of Yael, both very, very praiseworthy. Now, I'm going to run out of time. I've already run out of time. Barbara, if you're still there, can I come a bit late to the US meeting? And let me give you 5-10 minutes to finish this. I hope that's okay. Because I want to point out something very, 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 I think, very powerful about what Yael did, why shouldn't, and for the reason. Firstly, just to understand this women of the tent thing, because I think it's really, really important. The women of the tent is very, very many different Mefarashim, our commentators, try and explain exactly what that means. Now, we've discussed, is she Jewish or not Jewish? We don't necessarily know, but it would appear Devorah blesses her in connection with these women of the tent. So Rashi says, Minashim bo'ahel, firstly, even before Rashi, Mer Nashim, from the women bo'ahel Tvorach. She is blessed from the women of the tent. Firstly, Mer, the mem, the prefix of mem, could mean either from me, Nashim, from this, or mem could mean even more than, me, as in either from the women of the tent or more than women of the tent. So that's one opinion. Actually, Yael, according to Devorah, is even more special than all the different women that came before, all those righteous special women that came before. So we're praising Yael to some great extent. But Rashi says here, Yael was blessed. Why? They bore and raised children. Were it not for Yael, this scoundrel would have annihilated them. This is taught in this is taught in the Midrash, which Rashi seems to be saying. 1 second. Saying, I want to know 1 second. She's being praised by, that's it, because I didn't understand Rashi, so I have to look on my notes. I didn't understand what Rashi was trying to say. It seems to be Rashi's giving two reasons. Either that she is being praised by the women of the tent, or she's being praised as one of the, or if not from the women of the tent, is not being even greater than the women of the tent, i.e. all the great mothers that came before. Or the Ralbag says at the bottom, in truth, Yael should be blessed. She helped them by killing Sisera, and she should be blessed more than the woman in the tent. So there's lots of opinions as to what Yael, her actions, but everyone seems to be praising her, whether it was because she acted in a very pure way and she's being praised for it, or she acted in a very dangerous way and she's being praised for it, and she's being praised seemingly on a par with all the great women that came before her. What is going on? So I've got one perspective that I think is going to bring this all together, and sorry. Oh, sorry, I thought someone was talking to me. Just everyone make sure you mute, that'd be great. One opinion is the opinion of the Netziv, and he says something fascinating about this. What does he say about this instance? He says you have to look back into times gone by, the times before Matan Torah, times of giving of the Torah. Once the Torah was given, we had a rule book. And if you're not sure about what to do, you look it up in the rule book. So any of you got a shayla, you've got a question, some of you would do a big Q&A on a Monday night, you got a question, you ask a rabbi. What does the rabbi do? He looks it up. Or you could look it up yourselves. Google's a great tool, by the way. Not knocking Google. Always check with your rabbi if you're not sure. But I'm saying we've got answers for most things, right? We just got to know where to look and understand it. But before the Torah, if they had a question, what would they do? Or how would they know what to do? So what would they do? They would do their best. They would literally sit there and work out, what should I do? What is the right thing to do? There was the 7 Noahide laws that were given at the times of Noah, very relevant to our Sidrot at the moment. And we know that Abraham and his families and his descendants kept Torah whichever way they understood. And that was passed down through the generations. But when they're living in Egypt and they're forming a nation, they don't have a rule book. They have traditions that have been passed down. They have the Noahide laws. But essentially, all they're trying to do each day is just try and think, what does God want for me? And try and do it. Then came the Torah, as we said. So there was no kind of making it up. But says the Netziv, says the Ha'emek Davar, sometimes in life, there are moments where you have to revert back to, I've got a rule book, but I don't know what to do, and I need to make a decision in the moment. And that's exactly what happened to Yael. Yael made a decision in the moment, not because she planned it, not because, he says, not because she went out there to attack him. She sees Sisera coming towards him. She's obviously got an affinity because she is Jewish, or that she sees, like we said before, maybe from David Levinson, that her husband has broken away, and therefore she sees the broigus, the problems, the separation from the treaties. She sees the ruthlessness of Yavin, of King Yavin, of Sisera and all their armies. For whatever reason, she sees a moment and she said, actually, I don't know what to do. I can take this into my hand and I can kill him there and then, which feels so very wrong, but it would be the right thing to do because, as one of the commentators we just saw says, I'll be saving all those children that can come after because of this scoundrel's gone, because of this evil dictator, this ruler, this general. Once this person has gone, Jewish people will be free. So says the Netziv, she has to revert to pre-Torah times because she doesn't have a Torah in that moment, because she doesn't know what the right thing to do is. She hasn't got Shaila text. She hasn't got the rabbi's number. She's got no ability to ask the question, what do I do? Should I kill him or should I let him live? So in that moment, based on the fact that she's trying to do the right thing, based on the fact that she hopes and prays for that she's doing so lishma, for the sake of heaven, and not because of anger and not because of hatred, just because she wants to save lives. So she does this seemingly aggressive, maybe even immoral. She does this act, and a veira, a sin, even to sleep with him, to kill him, whichever way you look at it. She does it lishma, for the sake of heaven. She does it to bring goodness, and she does it because she wants to try and do the right thing. So what the Netziv says is we don't have the ability to do that ourselves properly because we have a rule book. And we've got to make decisions. We have an obligation to become knowledgeable, thinking, wise people, that when we're faced with decisions that we are challenged with, We've got to know what those answers are the best we can. We can't lead life in an ignorant way where we're just trying to and our way through life and just every time a question comes up, just ask a question. No, we've got to be learned people. We've got to be wise people. But if we are being genuine to that and we're faced with a decision that we have to take where we genuinely don't know what the answer is, even if it might lead to us sinning, says in it, Siv, you can see from Yael that she did so and she's praised for such a thing because she cares. It's heartfelt, it's genuine, and she genuinely wants to do the right thing. So I learned so much from Yael because we can see, as I said a few times, how much she's praised by Devorah, by Tanakh, by the Gemara, by the Midrash, by everyone else, all the commentators, they're all praising her. No one is turning around and criticizing her. But the way that it's here, he puts it in a way as you can't just assume that what she did was a good thing. You have to put it with the correct set of glasses and say, why is it a good thing? Because she was a learned, caring, sincere person, and she did so because she wanted to do the right thing. She didn't set out to do it. It was a snap, momentary judgment call. And she did so with sincerity, and she did so to be in the most righteous ways. So that's why I think there was a lot to learn from Yael. And as I say, we have to. It is incumbent upon all of us to be learned people. That when we're faced with difficult decisions in life, we have some kind of understanding. We've got to. It's amazing. As I spent all my years learning and trying to understand, and I go through. The more you learn, and the more you know and understand, the more one realizes how much you don't know. And I genuinely feel that, and therefore I think it's incumbent on all of us to push ourselves to continue to learn, to continue to grow, to continue to, you need some knowledge to know when to ask a question, and I think that's all we can learn so much from Yael, and I can see so much why she's with this perspective, why she's so praised by our great Tanakh and by the Mefarshim that come after. So this is our heroine. This is Yael. Very different from Devorah. I don't think that Devorah, I think Devorah would have been someone that would have naturally had that inner strength, as Carol said, to kind of, this is why I wanted to come back to Carol. I don't think it was premeditated. I don't think she had it in her. I don't think she was a Devorah character. I think in the moment she was overcome by wanting to do the right thing, and that sincerity and that righteousness is what gave her the strength to do such a heinous act. Does that make sense?
Rabbi, I know you have to go, but just on Devorah, armed with this knowledge now that you've given us about Yael and that story, are we any closer to answering the conundrum about Devorah's prophecy? Which woman was she referring to? Do we think? Yeah.
Well, Yael saved the day. I mean, there's different opinions. You could argue Devorah saved the day because she instigated the whole plan, but Sisera fell to the hand of Yael. So who wins the battle? Is it the guy? Is it the one that kills the guy, or is it the one in the tent making the plans? Mm-hmm. So it could be both. It's either her or Yael.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks, David. I apologize that I'm going to out, but I'm late for a meeting. Thank you for this journey. Next week, we'll totally different story. Please join us again and tell all your friends. And Kabbalat Shabbat, 3:30. Be there or be nowhere else because all the shows are closed. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
I won't see anyone tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.